Okay, well, welcome, folks, to another episode of the Astrology, Family Karma, and Relationships podcast. I'm your astrologer and host, Alexander Mallon, and today we've got a special guest astrologer. Thanks so much, Tim, for joining us today. It's great to have you. Tim Nielsen, who is a brilliant astrologer, writer extraordinaire. And I don't know if you want to share, Tim, a little bit of your background. I think you were a Tillite, weren't you? Weren't you a kind of a major participant in the School of Astrology by Noel Till, famous
I
astrologer?
did. Thanks for the invite, Alexander. There's nothing more that I enjoy than um, our connections when we chat on the phone. And kibitz, I think you referred to it
Yeah.
as. And so this is fun. This is fun for me to, hop back on. I mean, we've done this in the past, and it's been long overdue. And I appreciate your reaching out today. Just very timely. Um, I think my association with Noel Till, who just I think towers over many other astrologers and astrology, quite frankly, in his own right, in the way he approached astrology in a way that I will always appreciate. Um, I actually joined his course out of frustration because I'd studied with Patricia Norelli Bachelet for 10 years. Um, prior to signing up with Noel. Now, all these years later, I've come to appreciate their distinct approaches to astrology, and they're basically different animals. You know, um, one I think is a pet lion, which would be Till, and his work can help someone approach the natal chart with such ferocity that addresses the psychological challenges much in the way that you do your work on individual astrology and keeping the human being in mind and not leaving the human being behind, right? You do that so very well. But Patricia, her work is kind of like having a pet unicorn. It is a different animal. I don't know too many people who get immersed in it and stay with it very long. And here I am all these years later, and I finally have embraced that they are distinct, and so that's the way I treat them. But that's a little bit of my background. Patricia was very much connected to Sri Aurobindo and his work and built on that. And so for some of your listeners, they may be familiar with Richard Tarnas's work, who at the Integral School or University in San Francisco is a Aurobindo satellite. And so that's a fascinating connection that I just didn't even realize till I picked up Cosmos and Psyche. He he's as verbose as Sri Aurobindo, but it is very fascinating work.
Well, we're
There's
gonna
no
we're gonna have to come back together, Tim, and really dig into your experience and knowledge of Patricia's work and Aurobindo's school, Sri Aurobindo.
mm,
People, the listeners will probably know more popularized figures like Ram Dass,
mm,
sort of an American guru, or maybe Paramahansa Yogananda back in the 30s. Sri Aurobindo was another major figure,
mm.
another major spiritual figure who brought ideas of the East to the West. So maybe
Mhm.
we can have you back a bunch of times to really dig
Well, I
into
would
that.
love because you are well versed in all those uh, areas, especially the embrace of the East and the Hindi um, viewpoint, and it's powerful. It's powerful, and yet here we are. We are Western
Western.
astrologers, and so was Patricia. She had a very um, adamant approach that there is only one zodiac. And she has actually a paper up on her site that was written by a friend of mine, Robert Wilkinson, and they've both passed since, but it is a brilliant, brilliant piece. But that would like knock us off the path that we're on
Yeah,
today
yeah, yeah. Well, let's
to
come back
talk
to that's
about.
juicy stuff. So,
Yeah,
folks, you
yeah.
see that that's why I have such a grace to have you here, Tim. Tim Nielsen is a brilliant writer, brilliant astrologer,
Oh my
brilliant
God.
thinker, and many other things you'll share with us in the future. Well, let's jump into today's program if we can. That that we're talking about the inauguration here.
Hmm.
Our focal point would be the 2025 inauguration. Let me bring this slide up a little more clearly here. Hold on a second. Kind of get my screens arranged here. So sorry, folks, for the challenge of my computer skills. I've had a couple of different windows here and a couple of interesting different incarnations for this.
Hmm.
So we could say, Tim, that here we are. I was joking with Tim earlier, folks. So 100 billion suns, 100,000 light years across, one cosmic year, 240 million years. Our sun has traveled 20 cycles and counting. And here we are, sort of this powerful time period. How did we arrive at this powerful time period, Tim, with all these amazing things that are shifting for us?
Am I
And
supposed to be seeing a deck?
sorry, let me do that. Sorry about that. A screen share here.
I mean, I was visualizing with
Yeah,
your
yeah, we don't want that.
excellent description. Start over and do it again.
Oh, well, I was having a little fun with the fact that we're all traveling around this cosmic egg.
Yeah,
And
this is
we're trying
beautiful.
to make sense of things always, where we're
Yeah.
going, where we're coming from, and how to best get there. So I love this idea of our galactic. We're in the galactic outer arms as the Sun Earth relationship in the outer arms of our galaxy of the Milky Way, and we're all trying to figure out as we go along, right? What's next? And here we are, all these powerful themes of this year, 2024, 2025. We've got Ukraine and we've got flooding and we've got leaping lizards and all kinds of incredible things that are happening in this journey.
Wow. To
Uh,
me, you go from so big, so vast to so small. But keep going.
Although I would wonder if Aurobindo and Yogananda and others would say, yes, the universe is within us and without us. We're unified. That's kind of the idea of astrology that we are part of this giant cosmos.
Yeah.
Well, of course, here's the mastermind behind all these major things that are happening. He is behind, and he is making America all kinds of things with the flag here. So I kind of wonder, Tim, 2025 some say it's a reset for humanity. There are other programs that we'll be discussing, folks, about Pluto, Saturn, Uranus. Maybe we'll touch on it today a little bit, but there's some really big things that are happening for us astrologically, right, Tim?
For sure. For sure.
But I've been hearing that we should be holding on to our butts and remember to breathe. So here's Donald Trump's chart, folks. He's going to be our next leader, as he was before, and he's coming on board again to take the reins. Uh, his time of birth, Tim, by the way, is disputed by some. They say he gave it to be I think it was like 10:30 or something, 10:20 in the morning. But we are using June 14th of 46 for Donald Trump at 10:45 in the morning in Queens, New York. And that would give him a couple of powerful things in his birth chart. That Leo rising, the king, in fact, that 29 Leo, which in terms of astronomy, fixed stars, is that fixed star Regulus, the heart of the lion, which is rising. And it's one of the four royal stars of Egypt that mark the turnings of the seasons. But the royal star of Egypt is 29 degrees of Leo, Regulus.
Is this the chart that so the other chart is the chart that he supposedly supplied on the internet with his birth certificate, right? I think that's 920.
Okay, could have been 920, thanks.
I forget.
It's
But
like
but
it's that might be right. It's about a 15
this
degree Leo
one
rising.
this one Bill Cerubi said is the correct chart because In his opinion, it was the time that was given by his mother. It came directly from her. So it's a pretty powerful argument. And, um, you know, who knows? Like the birth chart, even though it could be authentic and it might not be a ruse, it could still be wrong because hospitals get it wrong. But the idea there is that the mother was probably ought to know she was there.
Well, and astrologically, it makes a lot of sense for those people looking at the chart. Having Mars rising, the rising sign in the chart describes how we collectively pull our inner self to meet the outer world requirements and demands of our day, and how we rise. And it says he rises in a martial way, and it says he rises in a monarchical way, if that's the right. Quite, am I inventing a word here?
No, that's good. That's good. And anger, right?
Well, and
Yeah.
he's Leonianly proud to be a fighter and seen as a fighter. Although
Beautiful.
it's interesting, he may be a fighter in character, but I'm not quite sure. Well, he wasn't militarily a leader or otherwise, but there is certainly a martial quality. And
Well, the that is beautiful, and it's interesting. He's got all that projection and potential, but yet you've got this opposition between the sun and the moon, which classically, I think it was Grant Louis who talked about that particular combination being someone with feet of clay. So how fascinating is that? All talk, right, but no substance. And that certainly is fitting for his personality. And the other thing you pointed out to me before the call was the contact with the nodal axis. And I don't know if I read that in Louis or somewhere else, the preponderance of mental illness with that connection to the South Node. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but anyone who saw the campaign thought for sure Kamala was going to run away with this thing because, the wheels were coming off for Donald Trump. And that's not what happened.
well,
So
you're
pretty
bringing
wild.
up some big juicy stuff when we look at the U.S. chart this
Oh,
time. Maybe we can come back to that. But you were saying that that Grant Louis, famous astrologer of the 30s and 40s, Grant
mm,
Louis,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that he was suggesting the nodes near the lights, like the moon, south
No,
node,
specifically near the moon, near the
near the
moon,
moon, the
on
nodes
an
near the moon.
eclipse. Well, actually, no, you're correct. Near the lights, because I think it was a reference to that conjunction during an eclipse specifically. And I apologize, I don't know if it was Grant Lewis, so I don't want to speak out of turn. It very well could have been.
So, well, but one thing astrologers know, right, Tim, is that when we have the moon's nodes, that is where the eclipses are during a given year, and
Correct.
always the north node and south node of the moon are opposite to each other in a person's birth chart. In Donald Trump's chart, the north node, Dharma, usually in Western terms, is
Hmm.
conjoined next to his sun and his Uranus.
Hmm.
Uranus of revolution, and sun of one's ego projection and one's life force. One's sun is, let's say, one's life force, that literally where the sun is that day. Donald was a Gemini, born June 14th. Here's the sun at 22 degrees of Gemini, right in that. So moving in front of the stars of Gemini. So he's a Gemini sun. And his sun is right next to planetarily. If we could have blocked out that sun like artificially, I could have pointed a telescope and shown you Uranus right next to his sun that day of his birth. So he's a Sun Uranus conjunction and a full moon baby. Donald Trump is with
Right.
that moon opposite that sun, and the moon on the south node and the sun on the north node. So this it says he's born during a lunar eclipse, and I kind of throw out there this idea, the Earth's shadow in between. A lunar eclipse covering the moon or cloaking the moon, materialism in a way, the material earth, the physical world, cloaking one's emotional core, is something I thought about.
Oh, interesting.
So here's the inauguration date that a lot of people are talking about.
Mhm.
January 20th, upcoming this next week, 2025. And a couple of really key things in this chart, right, Tim? We've got especially this Mars opposite a Sun, Pluto, Mercury conjunction. So at 12 noon, the sun's overhead, as it would be always in a chart overhead at the top of the chart, not at the midnight point. The sun's at the top of a chart, midday rather.
Mhm.
So here's the midday chart, and it happens to be in the sky that Mars has been these weeks now, last week, last couple of weeks, the next few weeks, actually these months, I should say, kind of like Thanksgiving through February. Mars has been retrograde and stationed retrograde and opposite that Sun and Mercury and Pluto. So a lot of people are looking at that opposition in a big kind of grandiose way, right? So I wonder what your thoughts, Tim, might be about Pluto, Sun Mars Pluto opposition.
I just want to interject that your work with retrogradation is really quite skillful. I want to just throw that out there. As you were buzzing through your program, which you do know quite well, and were able to get significant dates related to, I think we were talking about the retrograde Mercury during the election and the shift in the trajectory of that the election, which ended up with the outcome being Donald Trump winning. But Kamala looked like she had gained the lead and was running away through it through August and moving into September, and then things shifted. But now we know who the next president will be. It's fascinating to me. I personally look at the chart and I don't get my panties in a bunch like, some people do over, oh my God, the world's going to end. I mean,
Right.
I think he's there for a reason. I have the advantage of having other synthetic models because, astrology to me and the symbolism is a synthetic model of the cosmos. And we're applying what we learn from pattern recognition to like, okay, what's going to happen this time based on, past rounds that we've gone through. Be that as it may, I'm also using other models to help inform my view. I think what this chart suggests to me, aside from all the things that we discussed prior, Alexander, is significant in the Grand Cross that you identified. You were talking about other things first, but that's where my eye went to immediately. Um, and I'm looking at the moon square Mercury. I'm looking at especially Mars square the moon. That opposition between Mercury and Mars, and how they're tying in, those three planets are tying into Chiron in the 12th. And so, we don't really even need the chart to look at the experience, the lived experience. Like there's a lot of pain and woundedness in the country. And there's something about this that's unfolding that needs to heal. And the administration has to approach these issues with subtlety and diplomacy and balance. None of those attributes that are probably going to be in very much quantity in the next administration. So I look at that moon, and the Hellenistic crowd loves to talk about the via combusta,
Yes.
that range of,
Brilliant.
I don't put too much, stock in it personally because my daughter's chart. She has a moon at 16. Libra. She's a doctor at Harvard, so
So,
whatever. I mean,
You're relating to the fact for those people who are beginner or early astrologers, the Via Combusta, the fiery
yeah.
way of sort of Libra Scorpio, right? Any placements in those degrees, and that moon could be considered sort of part of the, heading toward the Via Combusta, the fiery way or explosive, turbulent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, just as an aside, fun fact. So my wife and two of my daughters they got already, and they sent me the pictures, tattoos of glyphs that I have two daughters getting married this year, and they wanted to do something together to try to do some kind of bond. So they thought, Dad, draw us these glyphs, and I shared it with you, um, Alexander, the glyph of the Capricorn, which is the my youngest, Gracie. She's the dancy goat. That's what I call her. So they got those drawings, sent them over to the artist who replicated my hand on their lats. It looks like they put them.
Hmm.
So it's like I got thinking about it. It's like, wow, they branded themselves
Well,
with their sun sign. So kind of fun. And then you called, and here we are talking about the inauguration chart. They're incredible. And I feel that sometimes the rules that we inherit need to be taken with a grain of salt, or at
you mean the
least,
astrological rules?
yeah, yeah. And at least, if not a grain of salt, to that we need to be a little circumspect about what will, unfold. Talking about the election, I was I was very confident that Kamala was going to pull this off, and you never were. And you were such a pain in the ass, sitting there in your diaper. Whoa, the world's and son of a bitch, you
I,
were right.
well, I'm not sure that my
I'm
diaper was.
never going to forgive you for that,
I'm not sure my diaper was fully loaded, although it may load up further as we get into this presidency. I will say that when I saw that we were having transiting Jupiter in Gemini
Yeah.
on Donald, a 12-year cycle. So Jupiter's cycle around the sun's 12 years, a 12-year orbit. So it's in Gemini. So in general, right, Geminis are supposed to be having this really terrific year, these years. It was just plain and simple astrology 101.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Well,
right,
I mean, the crowd that was, gunning for Kamala,
Kamala.
they were hopeful because, Jupiter is not very strong in Gemini. So, that was their card that they were playing, but it just doesn't matter. Jupiter is Jupiter.
Well, also too, though, there's something else that that we need to look at. We were discussing earlier, and you made a reference that this election,
Mm,
during the election, we had a retrograde Mercury period, and I believe the
mhm.
last few presidential elections we had the same retrograde Mercury.
Right.
And astrologers say, gee, when you try to execute something during a retrograde Mercury, things usually go awry or
Yeah.
weird things happen.
Yeah.
So we had this retrograde Mercury right before. In fact, the whole shadow period of the retrograde Mercury actually occurred like 2 days before this presidential election,
Mhm.
2024. And so we had a retrograde Mercury cycle that was just about to begin. We have a Mercury that is out of bounds. It's called out of bounds right now, opposite
Brilliant.
an out of bounds Mars. And what that basically means is Mercury being very, very low from the ecliptic and or Mars being very, very high. In other words, the net effect of that Mars being out of bounds is when we look up these evenings, folks,
Hold on a second.
astronomically.
So you were talking about Mercury being out of bounds during the election, and now you're talking about Mercury being out of bounds
No,
during the inauguration.
I'm discussing Mercury being, oh, pardon me if I said that. Mercury being retrograde during the election
Oh,
and
right.
Mercury
Okay.
being out of bounds now.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
We have an out of bounds of Mercury right now and an out of bounds Mars right now during this presidential election
Right.
2025. So it means that there's a highlight of mercurial issues,
Hmm.
paperwork, verbal messages, messaging, and public messaging, and a highlight of martial. Martial meaning military, or martial meaning, well, Mars is like cutting and burning. Well, think about the fires we just had last week, the firestorm in California. We're having a literal firestorm, right? And some would say a political firestorm concurrent with each other.
Well, I like that. I like that. I think that when you look at the Grand Cross here, the way it's depicted, the words, the messaging, the thought processes are at odds with the actions that are necessary for the public in the mundane. I guess it's a mundane chart, so we're considering the moon to be the public, right? And
Yes.
public welfare. It's in the sixth house, and all of these um, forces are really coming together sort of in a perfect storm to force on us this eventual healing. So, in a way, we are all going to experience the wounded healer experience. We're
Right,
gonna
Chiron,
be,
the wounded healer.
we are gonna be in it. We are putting on the shoes of Asclepius, right?
Asclepius, that's right. Well, also too, you made mention this particular inaugural chart of 12 noon on the 20th
Mhm.
has Mars at the bottom of the chart, meaning the root, meaning the home, meaning in real estate, rather in astrology 101, it's real estate, it's home,
And
it's
Cancer,
what's that?
and it's in Cancer.
Well, and Cancer itself is the sign of the home, the root, family, childbearing. So Mars, the god of fire and war, in the root of the inauguration chart, meaning the root of the nation, or you could say the home of the nation, or the land of the nation, or the property, or one's house. The firestorms in California are really, I think, perfect timing. It is, in fact, when you look at the LA chart, one of the LA charts I have has that Mars Pluto opposition right on the LA chart. And so, one of the things that would be the extreme of Mars Pluto. Pluto, think plutonium. Mars, think martial or fire, explosion. So this presidential inauguration has all the fixins of an explosiveness behind it, that's for sure, plus what's happening in the world right now, 2025. I wanted, Tim, if we could, to segue to one other slide or two about this Pluto
I just
cycle.
want to add, if we
Oh,
didn't say about that chart, um, I just want to add that what it does, everything you said, and then I just want to add that emotional component is huge.
right.
It to me, it feels like that is the tinderbox. There's an
Uh,
emotional, um, there's a need for diplomacy and balance as I mentioned, but the undercurrent of um, emotional and passionate um, divide, I think, comes to a head here. That's what it looks like to me. Ultimately, I think this is a positive thing, but it's not going to feel that way for people, I don't think,
and
as we
and
get
I
into
may
it.
add
And no surprise, right?
Since in a political chart or a nation's chart, the moon does describe the people, okay, the
Okay.
individuals, the people, the populace.
Hmm.
The south node there with the moon describes karma or karmic changes or fateful karma or fateful turning points. So when I talk about karma and opposite dharma, karma to me is more like a habituated unconsciousness where there's a need for awareness and awakening to happen. And this chart says there's a need for an awakening to happen around the health and wellness of the people in the home, the hearth, and the people. We also have some have asked me, Tim, what this black moon, transiting black moon next to moon. What is the black moon? I've discussed it in other programs, but the black moon is kind of like a Pluto point. It's a mathematical point. It's where the moon is most distant to the Earth in its orbit. So that black moon talks about sort of a hidden underbelly theme, like a Pluto theme, like a the hidden underbelly emotional theme of families and people. Well, we could talk about immigration law. We could talk about Mercury in the ninth house of law and Mars, the firestorm opposing it, immigration law and the people. So that opposition and that grand cross A grand cross, think of like, I guess I was raised Irish Catholic, Jesus on the cross, Well, that's a
Mm.
lot of constructs people give to grand cross. So it says this inauguration is certainly a powerful karmic moving thing that's happening. And that's why I wanted, if I can, go to Pluto. We're having Pluto change signs. It's been a big thing in the astro speak, right?
Yep.
And Pluto changing signs into Aquarius. Last time that happened, well, that was the French and American revolutions. And before that, Pluto changing into the sign of Aquarius, the Copernican revolution. Think of Kepler, Galileo, and Newton, Isaac Newton. Before that, the Islamic Golden Age, where literature, science, economics, medicine, mathematics, astronomy, astrology, it was kind of the golden age of awakening.
Well
So
done.
in a way, this Pluto Aquarius that we're having might be an age of awakening. And God knows this presidential inauguration chart is right on awakening. But the oppositions in Grand Cross says challenging awakening, challenging awakening.
Well done.
Yeah. We'll talk another show if we can get you back about these three planets changing sign. Uranus changing signs. Uranus discovered during the French and American Revolution, Revolution. Neptune changing signs this year. Innovation, imperialism, where all Neptunian change of signs, things that happened in the past. And again, Pluto itself discovered in 1930, where within 5 years of discovering plutonium and energy themes,
Mhm.
and within a decade or a handful of years where plutocrats abounded in the 1930s.
Yeah.
So again, Pluto themes deal with energy themes, power themes, and plutocracy themes. That's what we're going through right now. We'll talk about this lunar standstill another time. We'll come back to the Saturn changing ring plane. We have a ring plane crossing. Maybe you
Oh,
and I could
wow.
discuss this another time. That's a 20-year cycle, this ring plane crossing of Saturn. Boston
And
Tea
that
Party, story
that
of that
is your
field.
discovery, isn't it?
No, all astronomers are all super tickled and giddy to have the changing of the rings over a 14-year
No,
period.
I understand, but the astrological significance, no astrologer has talked about that before you.
Right.
That
No astrologers discussed it before me, and
that's
that's because they're not back. They're not. I'm at the eyepiece every night. I mean,
yeah.
literally, I'm at the eyepiece every night, and I do what astronomers do. I watch the sky,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah, that's brilliant stuff. And then the lunar standstill was I was gobsmacked at that. And so those are discussions I think your listeners are going to really want to tune into. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, these lunar standstills, these major lunar standstills, where the moon is really really high in the sky overnight, rises far northeast, and it's way high overhead. And when
Mhm.
these major lunar stands, so I guess we'll get into it. We'll touch on it. The major lunar standstills usually correlate with major turning points emotionally and generally generationally and sort of zeitgeist. So the last major lunar standstills we had, 1913. 1931, 1950, 1969, 1987, Reagan years, 2006, and this year, 2025. 1913, 1914, World War I. 1931, 30, 31, 33, 35, the beginnings of World War II and the rise of Nazism. 1950, the Korean War. 1969, the Vietnam War, and the U.S. entering Vietnam really powerfully in earnest, right, in 1967, 68, 69. 87 is the only year period that the lunar standstill didn't seem to really generate much that we could put our finger on, the Reagan years. But then again, the Reagan years were when we gave corporations the values of people, the power of an individual in a person. So corporations, the corporate America really took off.
Mm.
2006 was near that 2001 9/11 event and what happened politically thereafter, including the Gulf Wars. And here we
Well,
are.
global
So these lunar,
financial crisis too.
what's that?
The global financial crisis
Well,
was it's even closer.
the global financial crisis.
Yeah. I mean, it was a couple years later, but
Same in the 1931 cycle. We
I
had the
would say, yeah, I would
1929
say in
stock market.
2006, what's interesting about that with the lunar standstill is that that is probably when the lending went parabolic in the mortgage business, anyone who watched The Big Short, that's when all the investment houses were making hay off of these derivative products, and it got really inflated at that point. Values got inflated. So that was the point of mania as things were climbing to you know heights that supposedly would, no one would ever fall from until very short time later, everything came off. So we could see something similar. Now it's 2025. We could see all-time new highs. I think we're heading there in the market, and we could go quite a ways beyond all-time highs and keep climbing, and it will look like temporarily that we've reached a new day. We've reached a new day. But that chart that you showed, the inauguration chart, if depending on how much weight that carries, suggests that the other shoe will fall. It will come off. Um, we'll have to wait and see. The 2006, it took 3 years to get to 2007, when we knew there was a problem. I'm thinking it won't take that long this time. I think we'll probably know by within 2 years, um, probably within the midterm elections. So
Well, I love what you're sharing, and I want the audience to think about this. And fellow astrologers, we get rather. I think and you alluded to it before, Tim, about rethinking or being open or not having proscribed ideas astrologically too. There's still much to be understood and learned about the art of astrology, and that we're looking at cycles. That
mm,
yeah, astrologers we get myopic about when something is exact. When will Pluto exactly change from Capricorn to Aquarius? Oh, that X marks the spot. God doesn't work that way. Great Spirit doesn't work that way. Circumstance, situation, life doesn't work that way. It's a cycle.
yeah.
It's a cycle. I always tell clients we don't go from fall directly into winter. There's a period. There's a cycle. There's
Mm,
a shift over time, and I think you're telling us that, and you're
mm.
sharing
Well,
about the
well
markets.
said. Well said. Beautiful. Well,
So,
thank
Tim,
you.
always awesome to be with you. You're magical. You're wonderful. There's so much more for Tim to share with us, folks, and we'll make sure that we'll put on your any contact information you wish us to have to share with people so they can talk to you or reach out to you and your brilliance.
Mm,
And we'll hopefully have Tim back again for a bunch more shows because we've got a powerful time that we're in, folks.
mm. Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
so much.
Alexander, you're always the consummate astrologer. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure reconnecting with you. Thank you for sharing such a wealth of knowledge and information today. I learned a lot, and I hope your listeners did too. Good
I
to
hope
be here.
so. I hope so. Thank you so much, folks. Great to see you, Tim, and we'll see you again
Bye,
soon.
everyone.
Bye, guys. Take care now. Bye bye.